For decades, it was treated as a foregone conclusion. Most people assumed that when the time came to replace its aging fighters, Canada would do what it had always done. It would choose the American option. The assumption was not controversial. It was not even debated. Because in modern Western air power, the hierarchy appeared settled. At the top stood the stealth fighter built by Lockheed Martin, the F-35. Beneath it were legacy aircraft, upgraded fourth-generation jets, and smaller national programs. But for a country that shares the world's longest undefended border with the United States, operates within NORAD, and flies alongside American forces in NATO, the expectation was clear. Canada would buy the F-35. And yet, that assumption would not survive contact with reality. To understand the weight of Ottawa's decision, it is necessary to step back. Canada's CF-18 Hornets had served since the early 1980s. They patrolled Arctic airspace. They deployed to Europe. They participated in NATO operations from the Balkans to Libya. But by the late 2000s, the aircraft were aging rapidly. Maintenance hours were increasing. Availability rates were tightening. The need for replacement was no longer theoretical. At the same time, the F-35 program had become the centerpiece of Western tactical aviation. The United States was fully committed. NATO allies were lining up to procure it. The aircraft promised stealth, sensor fusion, and integration across a networked battle space that defined fifth-generation warfare. On paper, it appeared unmatched, but procurement decisions are rarely made on paper alone. Canada's strategic environment is unique. It is not defined primarily by expeditionary wars. It is defined by vast geography, extreme weather, dispersed basing, and the continuous requirement to monitor and defend the Arctic. The question was not simply, which fighter is most advanced? The question was, which fighter is most sustainable, most controllable, and most aligned with Canada's sovereign needs? The turning point did not arrive in a single dramatic announcement. It unfolded through years of analysis, trials, cost evaluations, and political debate. Sweden's Gripen entered the competition as an outsider. It lacked stealth. It lacked the global brand recognition of the F-35. It was often described as lightweight, sometimes dismissively, but the aircraft had been designed under very different assumptions. The Gripen was built for dispersed operations, for short runways, for rapid turnaround, for a nation that expected its air bases to be targeted and required aircraft that could operate from highways and austere locations. In winter conditions, in northern latitudes, conditions that felt increasingly familiar to Canadian planners. During evaluations, the debate quietly shifted, not toward raw capability, but toward control. The F-35 offered deep integration with U.S. systems, but that integration came with layers of software management, sustainment structures, and supply chains, largely controlled outside Canadian territory. Updates, mission data files, and logistics pipelines flowed through American-led networks. For some policymakers, this was reassurance. For others, it was dependence. The Gripen proposal emphasized industrial participation within Canada, technology transfer, domestic maintenance control, the ability to adapt software and systems without navigating a multinational hierarchy. Was stealth worth strategic dependency? That question became more difficult as cost projections matured. Acquisition cost is only the opening chapter of a fighter's life. Operating cost defines its endurance. Multiple defense studies indicated that the per-hour operating cost of the F-35 remained significantly higher than fourth-generation alternatives. Even as sustainment improved, the aircraft's complexity imposed financial gravity. Canada's defense budget, though substantial, is not limitless. Arctic patrols require long-endurance flights. NORAD commitments require readiness. NATO deployments require rotation cycles. Availability matters more than theoretical capability. In comparative analyses, the Gripen demonstrated lower operating costs, faster turnaround times, and high sortie generation potential from limited infrastructure. Sweden had built its doctrine around surviving under pressure, not projecting dominance from secure bases. The philosophy was different, and philosophy shapes performance. Critics argued that choosing a non-stealth aircraft in an era of advanced air defenses was a strategic miscalculation. They pointed to Russia's growing Arctic activity. They highlighted China's technological acceleration. They framed stealth as the price of relevance, but supporters countered that not every mission requires penetrating dense integrated air defense systems. Canada's primary obligations include sovereignty patrols, intercept missions, and alliance support, tasks where readiness, reliability, and numbers often outweigh low observability. There were also alliance dynamics. The United States did not conceal its preference. A Canadian F-35 fleet would ensure seamless integration with American squadrons, shared training pipelines, shared upgrades, shared operational doctrine, choosing differently introduced friction. Reports surfaced of diplomatic pressure, quiet warnings about interoperability, questions about future integration within NORAD modernization. Yet interoperability is not binary. Gripen aircraft operate within NATO structures today. They participate in Baltic air policing. They conduct joint exercises. Data links, weapons compatibility, and standardized procedures mitigate many differences. The debate then was less about compatibility and more about alignment. Alignment of strategy, alignment of autonomy, alignment of long-term national interest. As deliberations intensified, public discussion oscillated between cost and capability. But beneath the headlines lay a deeper tension. How much control is a middle power willing to relinquish for technological edge? When Canada ultimately moved forward with the Swedish Gripen, the reaction was immediate. Some described it as defiance. Others described it as pragmatism. In Washington, the decision was studied carefully. In Stockholm, it was viewed as validation of a design philosophy that prioritized resilience over spectacle. What does it mean for North American defense? The F-35 remains dominant within NATO. Its sensor fusion and stealth characteristics are real advantages in high-threat environments. Canada's decision does not diminish that reality, but it complicates the narrative of inevitability. It demonstrates that procurement is not simply about acquiring the most advanced platform available. It is about aligning military capability with geography, economics, and political sovereignty. There are risks. A non-stealth fleet may face limitations in certain conflict scenarios. Future threat environments are unpredictable. Investments in upgrades and electronic warfare will be essential. There are also opportunities. Domestic industrial participation can strengthen aerospace sectors. Software sovereignty can enable tailored adaptations for Arctic defense. Lower operating costs can sustain higher readiness levels across decades. The true test will not be in press conferences. It will be measured in sortie rates over frozen tundra, in maintenance hangars during long winters, in joint operations where doctrine, not branding, determines effectiveness. Assumptions, once broken, are difficult to restore. For years, the idea that Canada would automatically choose the American fighter was treated as settled fact. Now, it is not. The question that remains is quieter and perhaps more consequential. In an era where alliances are deep but national interests remain distinct, how many other countries are reconsidering what they truly need, rather than what they are expected to buy? And once that reconsideration begins, can the old expectations ever fully return?